Ecce Caius Iulius Caesar Octavianus.
Octave et Antoine ne s'apprécient pas du tout. Plus exactement, ils ont des rapports qui sont d'emblée très froids.
Lors de sa première rencontre avec Antoine, Octave adopte une attitude modeste. Il a 20 ans de moins qu'Antoine et ce dernier le traite avec condescendance, le désigne comme celui qui doit tout à un nom. Il l'appelle aussi le petit jeune homme.
Octavian was ambitious. He launched propaganda against Antony, flattered senators, bought off veterans, and sapped the morale of the legions. He handed out donations financed by his father's inheritance to form his own party and army, asserting his qualities as an adopted son. Octavian was just 19 years old. For a year and a half, Brutus and Cassius, still wary of Rome, rallied their legions in the east. Brutus took control in Greece and Macedonia, Cassius in Syria. They hired all the old soldiers they met, raised heavy tributes, and established a domain which would enable them to see off their enemies in case of conflict.
Urgenti fidas legiones habemus. Neque tributis colati et pecunia.
Disgratias agamus, qui tantaste ribellesque copias. Pro iure ac republica nobis dederit.
Faced with a growing Republican threat, Antony joined forces with Octavian despite their marked differences. They formed a triumvirate with Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, Caesar's main lieutenant. This, the so-called Second Triumvirate, was a legally established authority, with power to be shared between the three men for a period of 5 years. Avenging Caesar was the surest way of maintaining this power.
Avant d'accomplir cette mission, Antoine et Octavien s'occupent des ennemis de l'intérieur, en quelque sorte, et font exécuter leurs opposants. C'est ce qu'on appelle la proscription, sous forme d'affiches portant les noms des condamnés à mort, qui sèment la terreur parmi les sénateurs et les chevaliers.
Many of the proscribed were stripped of their assets, and new taxes were levied, which provided the money needed to confront the Republicans. Panic swept through the aristocracy, causing many of them to flee Rome. The alliance between Antony and Octavian unleashed a reign of terror. From then on, they would be known as the Caesarians. They went in search of Brutus and Cassius across the Adriatic from Brundisium to Dyrrachium, then onwards to the plain west of Philippi in Greece. Antony and his legions were first to seek out the Republicans, quick marching his men over 500 kilometers in 10 days, to the great surprise of their enemies. Treated as brothers in arms, his troops pushed on, surpassing their limits. Antony, Rome's greatest warrior, was therefore ready to cross swords with the powerful legions of Caesar's assassins and to deliver a merciless battle on the plain of Philippi. Urged on by their leader, a model of high esteem and worthiness, Antony's legions eagerly embraced the cause, in spite of facing fellow Romans. Brutus and Cassius took up position on high ground close to the town of Philippi. Brutus's camp was protected by dense forest and steep embankments, while that of Cassius was bordered by a seemingly impassable marsh. Antony set up camp 2 kilometers away, making do with the desolation of the plain. The 2 Republican camps sat either side of the Via Ignata, the only road that crossed the Eastern Roman Empire. From one camp to the other, Brutus and Cassius blocked the road with a rampart and ditch. About 10 kilometers away was the port of Neapolis, facilitating communications and refitting. The well-supplied and well-protected Republicans would be capable of waging a drawn-out war, while the Caesarians had no water and no nearby towns. Antony asked Cleopatra for help. She was to send 100 ships to Neapolis with reinforcements. Antony could then establish access to the sea, which was indispensable for resupplying his troops. Cassius built a huge palisade ahead of his camp to protect his forces. He believed the natural lie of the marshland offered further protection to the south. Antony knew he had to breach Cassius' palisade. In under 10 days, he secretly built a causeway across the supposedly impassable marshes, which would enable him to go round the palisade and attack Cassius on several fronts.
Le plus dangereux des deux adversaires entre Brutus et Cassius, c'est évidemment Cassius. Cassius a une expérience militaire incontestable que n'a pas Brutus. Brutus n'a pas d'expérience militaire. Cassius, c'est un vieux routier de l'armée et c'est la raison pour laquelle Antoine décide de s'attaquer en priorité à lui.
But Antony wasn't alone. He had been joined by the young Octavian and his legions. His mission was to lead a charge on Brutus's camp. If only he hadn't felt so weak. Octavian had arrived on a stretcher 2 days earlier. Antony gave out battle orders. Octavian was to attack Brutus. But Octavian showed no signs of recovering from the illness he was stricken with since leaving Rome. His physician reminded him of a nightmare he'd had, a bad omen. If he went into combat, the outcome would be fatal.
Quindi è una guerra terribile, crudele, condotta da due eserciti che tra l'altro combattono nella stessa maniera. Sono leggermente diverse le componenti all'interno, ma sono cittadini romani gli uni e gli altri. Le forze che si fronteggiano sotto Philippi sono forze enormi. Sono 19 legioni con intorno ai 17.000 cavalieri, le forze di Antonio e Ottaviano. Sono 17 legioni con un numero maggiore di cavalieri, circa 20.000 cavalieri, le forze di Bruto e Cassio. Sono circa equilibrate, circa 100.000 uomini per parte.
Antony managed to breach the palisade and could engage the enemy in hand-to-hand combat.
Utinam aetatem peragamus, si vero adversa pugnae voniet. Utrum fugere ad mori maletis, equideam victoriam ostium non time.
At the same time, Brutus attacked the Caesarian camp. Octavian was nowhere to be seen. Given the little resistance offered, Brutus easily took the camp.
Milites Romani propagatur, ut Caesaris caedem. Persequamur!
Antony decided to split his cavalry into two groups. The first was to cut off his enemy's infantry, while the second, led by Antony, led a charge on Cassius's camp.
Tantumoratus sum, ut amoris cosa, ut diligentissimum amicum, viderem ab ostibus captum. Cur recusas, ne decorrerem estaloas!
Antony won an astounding victory, fulfilling all his aims. Draw Cassius into combat, breach the palisade, and capture the camp. Brutus too was victorious. He had taken the Caesarian camp. But Cassius had been mistaken. Worse, he had believed Brutus captured.
Cassius a mal apprécié la situation, probablement en raison de l'opacité des fumées du combat. Il perd la vie stupidement à 45 ans, le jour de son anniversaire.
Il était réputé pour son autorité, sa sévérité. Il avait toute l'estime de ses troupes qu'il commandait avec une extrême discipline. C'était le meilleur général des armées républicaines. Le suicide de Cassius va coûter cher à Brutus.
"12 kilometers away at Neapolis, a sea battle was taking place at the same time as that on land. Antony and Octavian's fleet were suffering a shattering defeat. Brutus and Cassius's fleet closed off the sea to Antony for good, thus dispelling any hope of supplies and reinforcements. If the ships promised by Cleopatra had arrived, the outcome may possibly have been different. Cleopatra herself had in fact sailed from Alexandria at the head of a huge armada to bring help to Antony and Octavian.
Nihume. Διατάζω το στόλο να οπισθοχωρήσει. Γυρνάμε στην Αλεξάνδρεια.
Would this about turn, imposed by the tempestuousness of the Mediterranean, be understood by the Caesarians?
Cléopâtre est suspectée d'avoir eu une conduite équivoque, puisque ses renforts ne sont jamais arrivés aux Césariens. La tempête, survenue à point nommé, l'empêche d'être directement impliqué dans la lutte opposant Césariens et républicains. Pour l'instant, Cléopâtre ignore la victoire en demi-teinte des Césariens. Antoine a battu Cassius, Brutus a battu Octavien, un partout. Mais elle sait que si les républicains sont battus, elle n'est pas pour autant à l'abri de tout danger. Peut-elle compter sur la clémence des héritiers de César ? À Rome, elle a connu Antoine, mais ignore tout d'Octavien. Accueillera-t-il avec bienveillance Césarion, ou le verra-t-il comme un concurrent potentiel et un rival ? Elle doit attendre la fin de la lutte armée pour le savoir.
Lemorbo tu okognowi. Num melius Cleopatra jest?
Melius.
In aeterna gloria sit Caesar! Unus verus!
Vivat Marcus Antonius! Vivat Marcus Antonius! Vivat Marcus Antonius! Vivat Marcus!
This great military feat established Antony as the true heir of Caesar.